Hello and welcome to episode 2 of my prototype blog. For everyone who doesn't know me, my name's Fabian and today we're talking about the United Game Jam. If you don't know what a game jam is, don't worry, I got you covered. A game jam is an event where game developers try to produce a game, a full game, or more like the core system of a full game, like a prototype, in a specific time frame. Each game jam has its own boundaries, and for the United Game Jam this means you have to produce your game in 48 hours, but you are allowed to use any game asset you already created. The theme of the game jam this year was 2, and I planned to produce all the assets during the jam. Because I was at the hospital when the game jam started, I began the game jam with some few quick ideas and some small assets which I drew on my phone. I wanted to do everything with 2. I wanted to have 2 dimensions, 2 players, 2 enemies, 2 colors, and 2 actions that a player can perform. Here you can see the sprites which I drew on my phone. A day later, back at home, I reworked them on my computer. They didn't look a lot better, but I liked them better anyway. So after I had my sprites, I started with the core concept. So my players had to move left and right, they had to jump, and when I was doing all that in 2D, I suddenly thought I could make it in 3D and just put the camera in the right position for the player to think it is 2D. This made it way easier for me to switch between the dimensions. Actually, I was a bit unsure on how to put the cameras in the end screen which the players would see, so I switched them back from horizontal to vertical split and back and forth a lot of times. After the core concept for the player, like the player movement for jumping and walking, was done, I need some purpose for my enemies, so they would not just be floating around and do nothing. I decided to make the triangle hurt the player and the square to be an obstacle for the player he had to overcome. After implementing the enemies, I noticed that I was still using the character controller for my player. This had the issue that it was hard for the player to interact with the enemy. I took some time, removed the character controller and replaced it with a rigid body and a collider. I also did some work on the movement script of the player because it was not working anymore with a rigid body and a collider. After this was working properly, it was time for the player actions. It took me quite a long time, but in the end I decided to give the player the ability to shoot a ball which would transfer the enemy into the other dimension. So the blue ball was going to transfer the orange enemy into the blue dimension, and the orange ball was transferring the blue enemies into the orange dimension. Because now I had a rigid body, it was quite easy for me to make a dash, so I wanted to do that. I gave the player a small shield which would appear every time he dashes, so I used the dash not only for movement, but also for the player to destroy the enemies. When I was making the shields, I also gave the player movement animation. This looked way nicer before, and it was clear that the player was moving in a certain direction. Of course, in between every progress step, I did some playtesting. After I did the playtesting for the dash, I realized the dash was way too strong. You could just destroy every enemy. While this might have been fun, it removed the interaction in between the dimensions, which is not something I wanted. I wanted the player to have to interact between the dimensions and play together to solve the game. To solve this issue, I gave the player the ability to just destroy enemies from the other dimension. So the orange player could only destroy the blue enemies and the blue player could only destroy the orange enemies. Now I had all the core functionalities in place. But as you see, it was already the 3rd day and there was still so much missing. In the remaining time, I did a simple UI and a basic start and pause menu for the players to use. And I still had to do level design, and I at least wanted to have a tutorial level. Also, there was still no music in the game, like everything was silent. Well, I managed to do all that, but it got really tight in the end. I thought I submitted like 1 or 2 minutes late, but that was not the case. I really had a lot of stress, and after submission I realized I had like half an hour left. I used that half an hour to do some playtesting, take some screenshots, and just make the itch.io page as I wanted it to be. After the submission phase hit its end, I started playing other submissions. And before I show you how my game looked and come to the end of this video, I just wanted to mention and show you real quick which games I liked the most of the ones I played. I picked 4. I wanted to do 3, but in the end I picked 4 because all of them were really amazing. Those are not in a specific order, I just liked all of them. So the first is Robot Warehouse Keeper, a small game about a robot which you control by giving him instructions over a console. It was really polished, and actually it got the first place in the Game Jam, which is really well deserved. So up to the next game, Pac-Man Invaders. And as you can guess, this is a mixture between Pac-Man and Space Invaders. And I have to say, this game is hard. You have to control the Space Invaders while controlling the Pac-Man. You have to play 2 games at once. It's really quite fitting for the theme as well. Next up, and the third game in my list, is Cross Dimensional. In this game you go from a single line to a 2-dimensional square and then to a 3-dimensional cube. I think it was not as well fitting for the theme, but it was still an amazing game idea. And last but not least, actually the favorite game I had at this game jam, at least the one I had the most fun with, is Twin Ghosts. A fun little game where you control 2 ghosts, one which moves around as you want to, and one which you shoot. And the other ghost can shoot as well, and you can switch positions with the other ghost. And the other ghost bounces off walls. This game has so much functionality, it is amazing. It got ranked 33 in this game jam, but I think it should have been ranked higher in the list. So now to the part you all have been waiting for. Well, at least I hope so. Presenting you my little game. And here it is. So what was my rank in the game jam? As we all know, because someone else get the first place, I did not get the first place. With a score of 3.0 in innovation, 3.2 in relevance to the theme and 2.6 in design, I got an overall rating of 92. This is not too bad. It was about 300 entries in the game jam, so I'm actually quite proud of this result, seeing that it was my first game jam. So that's it. This is the end of the video. If you're now looking for inspiration or just want to have a little fun with a small little game, check out the link in my description. You can find Hap and Grump, this is how I named the game, on my itch.io page for you, free to play. See you next time!